Hello and welcome to our webinar today, Leveraging StrataLogica, Historical and Outline Maps. I am Aaron Willis, the Chief Learning Officer for Nystrom Education, and we have with us today Michael Hutchison, who's a teacher in Vincennes, Indiana, who's a relatively new StrataLogica user, but increasingly getting deeper and deeper into some of these different aspects of the platform and the activities that are there. Michael's been teaching for in excess of 30 years and is a department chair in his high school and has been in the past a computer teacher of the year in the state of Indiana and is very involved in national activities and trying to improve teaching and developing curriculum for teachers all around the country. So Michael's going to be focusing today on the historical and outline maps in StrataLogica. And with that said, Michael, please take it away.
Okay. Thank you, Aaron. As Aaron mentioned, we'll be looking at historical maps and two-dimensional maps in StrataLogica this evening. And I'd like to start this evening with just a quick polling question. How would you rate yourself in terms of confidence using StrataLogica? So Aaron, if you would put the polling question up for a second. As you can tell, the three choices are either very confident, somewhat confident, or I'm new. So Aaron, I think everyone's had an opportunity to answer that question at this point, so if we could go back to the presentation screen. It looks like we have some people here that maybe are new users to StrataLogica, so if I may, let me take just a few minutes and discuss with you all what StrataLogica is and give you some basic information about how to log into StrataLogica and how to just navigate around the site a little bit. So first of all, we'll just talk a little bit about what StrataLogica is. So welcome to StrataLogica. I always like to call StrataLogica an online geography application on steroids. So if you think about applications or websites or books or atlases that you have used in the past, most of the time they're pretty stationary, they're pretty stagnant. StrataLogica goes way beyond that. So if you're familiar with Google Earth, for example, StrataLogica is much more user-friendly and much more user-oriented than Google Earth would ever be. It can be used on the elementary level, the middle school level, and the high school level. So I'm a high school teacher, for example, but I could easily see a lot of application for it on the high school, middle school level and grade school level as well. And I don't have enough time this evening to just tell you every last feature that StrataLogica includes, but it has three-dimensional maps, two-dimensional maps, historical maps, landform, climate, all kinds of different things that you would ever want to use in a classroom. So it's very easy to use. It can be adapted to meet about any curriculum or any classroom. So in my situation, I'm using it with regular kids as far as U.S. history. I've used it with them, but I also have used it with dual credit AP level students as well. So let's talk a little bit first about how to get to StrataLogica. And you'll notice that this is what the typical login screen looks like. At the top of the screen, there's an arrow that'll point to the login button. To get to StrataLogica is very easy. Just go to a web browser, any computer, Android device, iPad, Chromebook, even a phone with an internet connection, and just type in www.stratalogica.com in the web browser. When the web page comes up, click on the login button, and that will allow you to enter your username and your password, and then we'll get started. Notice also that there are StrataLogica apps available for iOS, which would be iPad, iPhone, and also for Android devices. You would need to check your own system requirements and your own associated app store for details in the correct download. So we've logged into StrataLogica, we've accessed the site. Now let's actually do the login. At the top right of the StrataLogica screen is a box that will allow you to type in the username and the password. As you can tell, I've used my username for the login, the username login. However, the password is kept secret, so I type it in, but all I see are the little dots. I cheat a little bit And what I do is on my computer, I have Chrome remember my username and password. If you're doing it on your computer, that's fine, but I would recommend if you're logging in on a public computer, say in a computer lab, that you not do that, that you avoid allowing other people to have access to your information. So also, my district does not use Clever. Some districts do. If you use Clever and you want to log in using Clever, you may want to check with your StrataLogical administrator or check with your tech support people to find out exactly how to do that. So what we've done so far, we've actually gone to the web page, www.stratalogica.com. We've seen what the web page looks like. We've accomplished the login. So now we're ready to move ahead. So now we're going to just see the main screen for StrataLogica, and we're going to take a few minutes and just look at one aspect of it, and that's going to be the maps. So if you look at the screen, you can tell that the system has recognized me, it welcomes me. And then the strip across the middle of it, of the screen, gives me different options, things that I can click. I can click on the maps, which is what I'm going to do in just a second. There are also atlases I can access. There are charts for government and economics. There are outline maps that I can access and print. And there's also a library that tells me what I have. Now below the screen, what I don't have on the screenshot includes things like, for example, a link to the StrataLogica community, other teachers like you that have project ideas or have developed projects that you might use in the classroom or that you might share your projects with, messages that you've gotten in one way or another, tasks to perform, and a buzz feed, which is kind of like a Twitter feed in some ways. So moving on ahead, let's access the maps. Okay, this is a typical screen that will appear once I click on the map icon. And when I click on maps, it brings up a separate page, as you can see, with a 3D globe and a menu of different map choices. So the map chooser is where the arrow is pointing. It looks like 3 sheets of paper stacked one on top of the other. So if I click on that, this menu appears where I can scroll up or down, and I have all different kinds of choices. What I have showing it as a default is the early learning system, or series, excuse me. So the map chooser allows, or opens up a scroll bar that will allow me to access physical, political, historical maps, whatever I really want. So I have a multitude of choices, and with what time I have this evening, I just don't have enough time to really explain every last thing. So my suggestion to you as a participant this evening might be to just take some time and just surf through the site, just play around a little bit with it, and just see all the material and all the things that you can do with StrataLogica. So if I click on the 2D link, which is right below the map chooser, that will allow me to access 2D maps, which is the focus of what we're going to talk about this evening. So moving on to the next slide. Okay, I've logged into StrataLogica. I've clicked the maps. I've gone to the map chooser. Now I should be able to see maps in various maps in 2D format. So this is basically just what a normal person, what we would do to just find the 2D maps. So let's see what the maps look like in 2D compared to 3-dimensional. Okay, once again, there's the 2D icon that I would click. So let's look at Africa in 2-dimension versus 3-dimension. The map on the right is a 3-dimension map of Africa. As you can tell, it looks like a globe. So it's a 3-dimensional version of what a spherical globe would look like. The map on the left is a 2D globe. It's in a, what I believe, I don't know if that's a Mercator projection or an armadillo projection, but obviously the map looks somewhat different. You'll notice on the map on the left, on the 2D map, there's a little bit more information. For example, at the top of the map, you can see the bottom part of the actual key or the legend of the map. The rest of it's at the bottom. For some reason, when I cut and paste, that didn't work well. But the key, the legend, gives me information about different things on the map, like city symbols. It tells me a little bit about scale. As you can tell, there's more political information on the map, such as country names, cities within the countries, and all that, that I can see a little bit differently than I could in a three-dimensional map. Now, could I do that? Could I show those in a three-dimensional map? I could show probably the country names. I could show the city names. The key would not be visible. So what I might want to do here is I might want to use the key, the legend, as far as just a quick discussion of, for example, how far is it from Algiers, Algeria to New York City, or you know, how many miles across is South Africa, or you know, whatever. So it gives me the opportunity to do things a little differently and to just give my students a little bit different perspective. So let's manipulate the map a little. Okay, this is a map of a 2D map of just the United States. You'll notice on the right side, this is the map control. So the map control can be used to manipulate the map in one way or another. For example, I can use the direction control, which is the circle with the arrows going in 4 different directions. That will move the map to the left or the right, or it will move it up or down. So I can show different things on the map that way. I can manipulate it so that different parts of the map are visible and other parts of the map are not. The scroll bar increases or decreases the size of the map in the browser. So for example, let's say that I want to focus on the state of Texas. I can make it larger enough where basically the state of Texas is all that's going to be visible. And that way the students aren't distracted by what they might see on the rest of the map. So far what we've done is we've accessed the 2D maps. We've looked at the difference between 2D and 3D. And what we've done is we've also talked about how you can manipulate the map to make it more user-friendly, so to speak. So as we go along, if any of the participants have any questions, things that I need to restate to you or explain again, or if you have any questions you'd like to ask, please feel free to do so. Another aspect of the 2D map, which is a very good feature, is that you get extra material on 2D maps compared to what you might get on a 3D. For example, this is a map of the continental United States. You can see Alaska and Hawaii in the corner. But if you look at the top of the map, there are 3 smaller maps. One deals with climate, one deals with the language or demographic information, and the other deals with population. So what I can do with this map is I can ask students questions if they look at the smaller maps. For example, I can say, what part of the United States has the greatest population density? The middle map, which part of the United States has the most agriculture as far as land use? And on the right side of or left side of the map, I can say which part of the United States has the most temperate climate or the most tropical-like climate or whatever. So I can go into more detail. I can do class discussion. I could even make up quick worksheets where I could ask these students to give me answers based on what they see on the map. And again, as I mentioned before, the map legend on the bottom corner is always a good feature as well. So let's move from talking about 2D maps. Let's talk a little bit about historical maps. As a U.S. history teacher, that's a definite interest for me. So let's talk a little bit about how to find the historical maps. So I'm back to the main map screen, to the map chooser, which is on the left side. And if you look on the left side, there's a varied number of choices. This says intermediate political, but there are all kinds of other maps that I can access as well. If I use the scroll bar, I can use the map chooser to find the historical maps that I want. So I can look at a whole gamut of U.S. history maps or world history maps. And all I have to do is scroll to the desired map, whatever it is. Then I just select the map that I want to display. And then this screen will go away, and then the map should appear. So I'm not studying, I'm not covering Civil War right now, but that's an interest of mine, so I decided I would show you the Civil War map. So this is what the Civil War map looks like. And as you see on the map, there's a number of features here that I want to describe to you real quickly. First of all, the italic I, I'll explain that to you in just a moment. That gives you map information. This is the map chooser where you can go back and look at different maps that you want to show. This is the map, pardon me, that is, this makes the map two-dimensional. The two squares, I'm getting ahead of myself, the two squares will allow you to have a dual map viewer. In other words, I can show this map and say I could show a map of World War II if I wanted to compare and contrast. And I'll talk about the bottom menu choice in just a second, which is tips and lessons. Now I'm ready to go to the next screen. Okay, as I mentioned, the italic I gives you information about the map. So for example, when I click that, that tells me different things on the map that are of historical importance. For example, the states or the area that's in blue, that would be the Union states. The states that would be in gray, those are the Confederate states. So I guess that's a pretty common reference to the Confederacy versus the Union, the blue and the gray. So definitely, the kids could relate to that pretty quickly. And say, oh, now I know that Arkansas was a Confederate state, or I know that Texas was a Confederate state, or I know that what today is Oklahoma would be a Union territory. Also on the maps, you'll notice that there are blue stars and red stars. Those, as I mentioned in the legend, deal with either Union victories or Confederate victories. You can't see it on the map, but the big star with the circle around it is the Confederate capital, which would of course be Washington, D.C., or the Confederate capital, which would be Richmond, Virginia. The blockade was along the Gulf of Mexico and the Atlantic Ocean, tried to strangle southern ports, so the student can see that and see the effectiveness of that. One really neat feature of the historic maps are the call-out pointers. And you can see two of them on the map here. One is for Vicksburg and the other is up by Shiloh, up by Pittsburgh Landing in Tennessee. And if I click on those, what happens is a pop-up window appears and it gives me more historical information about that particular event or battle or whatever it is, and I'll show you an example of that in just a moment. So again, clicking on the italic I provides you with information about the specific map. In this case, colors for the Union and Confederate states, battles, other information. So if you click on the italic I, that brings a lot more of the features to light for you. So let's talk about how do you manipulate the map. If you look in the corner of the map, in the bottom right, you'll see a symbol that looks like the one that I'm showing here on the screen. So it looks like a circle surrounded by two semicircles. On the left side, you see a plus and a minus. On the right side, you see what I like to call, if you're familiar with LCD projectors, a keystone at the top where it's somewhat like a polygon, and in the bottom it looks more like a rectangle. And in the middle, it looks like a compass rose with an N at the top. So what I can do with this, on the left side, the plus or minus will increase or decrease the size of the map. So if I want to make area in the map smaller, I obviously would go to the minus side. If I want to make the map larger, I would go to the plus side. The right side changes the map orientation. So if I want to look at it more as a landscape, I might push it up towards the polygon end of the map. If I want to make it just straight on, as I showed you with the Civil War map a moment ago, I would go down towards the bottom. And in the middle, compass rose moves the map up and down or left and right. And so the N obviously refers to your north, your orientation from that direction. As I've been mentioning, certainly if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to put those in the chat window, certainly if you have any comments or if you want me to explain something over again, I'd be more than happy to. So let's talk about how to manipulate the 2D historical maps next. Again, there's our map control, just what we saw with the regular 2D map again. In the 2D historic map, the control appears in this format. The top circle allows the user to move the map up or down, left or right. The slider bar towards the bottom allows the user to make the map larger or smaller. So it's very similar to what we discussed a few moments ago with the 2D historic map, or 2D regular map, excuse me. Let's move on to some features. As I mentioned a minute ago, the call-out pointers allow you to see more information. This is one about Fort Sumter. So if the student clicks on this, what he or she sees is that the year is 1861 and that Fort Sumter fell to the Confederates in the first battle of the war. Some call-out pointers will have more information, some will have pictures. There's a wealth of information here that the teacher can use beyond what would be in a stagnant map like what you would see in a textbook or what you might see in a paper atlas. So that's one of the beauties of StrataLogica, that it allows the user, it allows the student to get more information than what they would normally get by looking in a textbook. So again, just as I mentioned before, there's other information here. The blockade can be seen, different battles can be seen, the difference between the North and the South can be seen. One other feature that is really great about StrataLogica and the historical maps is that there's a wealth of tips and lessons that can be used in order to help increase the learning experience of the students. The way I get to the tips and lessons is I click on what appears to be the bottom menu choice. It looks like a book and a pencil. If I click on that, the side window comes open and I can see there are tips, and those tips include things like how to use the library, moving around the map, map views, collaborating on maps, getting more information. So in essence, it's how to use StrataLogica. If I click on the right menu choice, the lessons themselves, I get an entirely different screen with a lot of other information. So I'm looking here at tips, but I'll show you what the lessons are like in just a moment. So let's see how we find the lessons. You'll notice that what I've done is I've clicked on the lesson tab rather than tip tab, and because of my screenshot I don't have it where you can see the entire screen, but it says Civil War 1861 to 1865 at the top, and it talks about the key elements, things that you'll use, the Civil War map, area of control maps, and then it gives some getting started questions. So if I were going to use this in the classroom, I might just start with my students and just ask them basic questions. Now, some of these questions might be more suited to elementary level than high school, but certainly it's a way to generate class discussion. And then down at the bottom, you'll notice it says teaching notes and mapping activities. And there are links to different activities that I can actually show on screen, and I can even download content where I can use those with my students. I can print them out as PDF files. So far what I've shown you is I've shown you the historical maps, I've shown you how to manipulate the maps, I've shown you a little bit about the features of the maps, we've talked a little bit about the tips, we've mentioned the lessons. So let's move on ahead and actually look at a lesson. So this is a sample mapping activity. There were 3 activities that were on the Civil War map. One was Union strategy, the other was Confederate strategy, and this one's called the bitter end. So you'll notice at the top it gives an overall objective. You know, what do I want the students to do with this particular activity? So if my principal came in and said, okay, what's the objective you have for this lesson? It's there. These lessons are also aligned to standards, which is very helpful, as for any teacher. So you'll notice on the activity it's asking you to mark certain places on the map. So they want you to draw arrows and lines, and the Union control, Grant's movements, Sherman's, different things on the map. And you can do that by using the tools that are in the toolbox, which is on the bottom left of the screen. And that wasn't really the focus of our session, but those tools are fairly straightforward, and there are also other webinars that are available that will help you learn how to use the toolbox if that's something new to you. So this is an activity that I could easily have my students do in a class period, or I could even have them do it as homework. So let's talk a little bit about some information or content that or questions that you might want to ask or just add. So obviously we've got not too much time left this evening. We have not a lot of time left this evening, so I'm just going to kind of look at the map myself and hopefully give you some ideas, some things that you might consider asking. For example, ask students to kind of consider the distance between the Union capital, which of course is Washington, D.C., and the Confederate capital, which is Richmond. What's the distance? How close is that? Do you think, what kind of strategy concerns might that pose for the Union and pose for the Confederacy? If you were Abraham Lincoln, how worried would you be that a Confederate Army might invade Washington, D.C.? Was that a real fear? Then why do you think there were so many battles fought along the Mississippi, or what was the farthest west battle? I mean, there's the choices here, the possibilities are endless. So it just depends on what you want to do as the teacher, and then what you want your students to be able to relate about what they see. One thing about the historical maps, when I showed the 2D maps in just the general maps earlier, you remember that there were other maps that showed some other content. The historical maps in 2D format do exactly the same thing. So you'll notice here that in this map, the call-up pins are all visible, because there's no way to animate those. And then also, if you look on the right side of the map, it gives you some smaller maps, which gives you an idea of the extent of Union control from 1861 to 1862 to 1863 to 1864. At the top left, you get an idea of the difference between the Confederate states and the Union states. It's not all clear on my map here, but there's a number of features here that you could use if you felt that your students needed more information or different information than what was available on the 3D map. One other feature that is really neat about StrataLogica are the dual map windows. If you remember, I showed you the two small dots there. They would be in the same location as the X would be in this window, because I actually have the dual map windows open. And what I wanted to do in this map, or this slide, is I wanted to show you the map on the left is the Allied and Axis powers at the beginning of World War II. The map on the right are the Allied and Axis powers at the end of World War II. And so you can compare these maps side by side, and then you can have your students answer questions, or you can point out things or whatever. So it's easy to do this. All I did was, again, where the X is, you normally would see two small dots. That allows you to open the dual map windows, and you will have the map chooser on both sides. And what you can do is you can change one or the other maps to whatever map you want to use. So it's a neat way to compare and contrast what the maps would look like. So in conclusion, let's sum up a few things. Using 2D maps allows the StrataLogica user an opportunity to see spatial relationships between nations and continents in a different way than a 3D map can do. Both types of maps are useful, but in different ways. So it's up to you as a teacher to decide how you want to use the maps. Do you want to use 3D maps, or do you want to use 2D maps? Historical maps provide an opportunity for students to learn about important events by analyzing maps and making conclusions about what they see. So we did that in a number of ways. We looked at a lesson that was included with the map. We made up some questions of our own that dealt with the maps. So there's any number of ways that the teacher can do that. Map activities give students an opportunity to dig deeper into cause and effect, as well as the impact of important historical events. But the nice thing is it's your option and what you want to do as a teacher. How in depth do you want to go? So you may find that you may add quite a bit of material, or you may find that what's there in the lessons is suitable. But I think what you'll find as you get farther into StrataLogica and you get more involved into it, that you'll find that you want to add things that you're going to be very creative, and that's definitely a good thing. So as I mentioned, the teacher can easily adapt or add content to StrataLogica maps to help students more effectively understand the content and analyze historic events. So you're only limited by what your imagination as a teacher can do. So finally, I appreciate the opportunity to have a chance to speak with you this evening about StrataLogica and 2D and historical maps. And you're more than welcome to contact me. There's a link to my website if you'd like to see a little bit more about me, and I have an email link there. I'm also available on Twitter. My Twitter handle is HutchisonM, and I would be more than happy to hear from you if you have any questions or if you'd like more information about what we spoke about this evening. So thank you very much, and it was a pleasure meeting all of you this evening, and have a good evening. Thank you.
Michael, thank you so much for your helpful comments. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to the next webinar with you.
Okay, Aaron. Thank you very much.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.